your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for a look at what's been making headlines in Alberta. The trial for 3 men accused of being organizers of the protests at the Coots border crossing continued this past week. Last week's proceedings focused on the testimony of Crown witness and veteran RCMP officer Mark Wheelgoss, who acted as a liaison between police and the protesters. During cross-examination, the RCMP officer testified there was no discernible leadership in the protest. The officer explained he couldn't identify leaders of the demonstration at a popular gathering spot used by protesters called Smuggler's Saloon. Meanwhile, another RCMP officer, Sergeant Greg Tulloch, testified one of the accused, Marco van Hugenbos, may have not orchestrated the protests, but he seemed to grow into a leadership role. He, along with Alex Van Herk and Gerhard Janssen, are each facing up to 10 years in prison for their roles in the 18-day demonstration at the Coots Canada-US border. Each of the men are being charged with mischief over $5,000 for allegedly being leaders of the protests against the government-mandated COVID-19 restrictions. The trial continues until April the 19th. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says a bill now before the legislature would stop Ottawa from directly funding provincial agencies without approval from her government. Smith says recent federal housing deals with Alberta municipalities that were made without her government's involvement were the last straw. She says existing deals will be honored.
Section 92 of the Constitution states that municipalities fall within the exclusive jurisdiction of the provinces. The terms could not be more clear or more certain. And yet, as we've come to see far too often, the federal government extends itself too far and interferes in our provincial jurisdiction. And we aren't the only province to see this and be troubled by it.
Alberta's Advanced Education Minister Rajan Sawhney is defending the proposed Ottawa gatekeeping bill after concerns were raised that it would jeopardize $500 million in federal funding for academic research. The proposed bill would apply to deals with municipalities and post-secondary schools. She says the goal is to keep the money flowing, but ensure projects funded by the feds match provincial priorities. And the Smith government continues to take heat from the Alberta NDP over what Rachel Notley's party calls the motel medicine scandal. This is in reference to a half-paralyzed elderly man from Edmonton who was allegedly moved to a Travel Lodge motel in Leduc after being discharged from the hospital instead of being placed in a care home. Laurie Sigurdsson, the NDP critic for seniors issues, continuing care and home care, called the United Conservatives' track record for seniors care, quote, undeniably abysmal.
When a patient leaves hospital, some go to continuing care supportive living facilities with every expectation that their care needs will be met and they will live in accessible, safe, clean, odor-free environment. Unfortunately, as motel medicine proved, that is not always the case. The UCP government track record for seniors care is undeniably abysmal. And the UCP's new Continuing Care Act that just came into effect illustrates how little this government values the lives of our grandparents, parents, extended family, and friends who live in continuing care or supportive living.
The father of an 11-year-old boy killed in a dog attack in an Edmonton home told reporters he never saw the two animals act aggressively towards people. Wesley Grist says the public attention about the killing has been stressful as he grieves, and the family prepares for a funeral.
Like, I'm trying to grieve, and now I can't because there's all this extra attention going on, and it hurts because, like, I've been unable to cry when I should be. I know I should be crying still, but I can't because I'm too focused on all this extra stuff that's coming in from people who know nothing about the situation. People just have to. They want to honor them and show us that they're there for us. Then just stop with all this anger and stop with all this finger pointing because it's unnecessary. And it's not honoring who my son was.
The city of Edmonton says there have been previous complaints about the animals. The child's grandmother, Nancy Pearson, says the boy lived in British Columbia with his mother, but was in Edmonton visiting his father for spring break. She says the father rented a room from the woman who owns the two dogs involved in the attack. The Alberta government says half of the 100 new frontline police officers promised a year ago for Edmonton and Calgary are now on the job. The rest are to be deployed by the end of this year. The United Conservative government announced the stepped-up police presence to tackle crime in the province's two biggest cities. $10 million in initial funding is to be split between Edmonton and Calgary for the officers, while long-term agreements are worked out. After the break, our legislative reporter weighs in on current issues around the province. As you heard before the break, the Alberta government will soon introduce legislation to prevent municipal governments from making direct deals with the federal government. This comes on the heels of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cross-country campaign-like tour to announce extra funding for housing in certain municipalities. There's been some criticism, however, that he's stepping on the toes of issues that should be left up to provincial governments. Our legislative reporter and Alberta correspondent for the National Post spoke with Jeanette Rocher to give us more details.
Yeah, so this is actually not a super new idea in Alberta. Jason Kenney had sort of pitched the similar thing, and it had not really gone anywhere. And Quebec actually already has similar rules. And the gist of this is that municipalities are, yes, they're the third level of government, but they're also very much creatures of the province. And so the province has quite a bit of, sort of legal constitutional sway over the way cities operate. And in the current context, what that means is that the provincial government is not necessarily happy with the federal government saying, aha, maybe we disagree with the province on something, but maybe if we go to the cities, we can give them money, we can hash out a deal with them and achieve at least a portion of this goal that we have, whether that's housing, whether that's transit funding, perhaps that's road funding, other infrastructure funding, things like that. So the province basically wants to be able to say, these are our priorities, these are the priorities that we feel the city should have, and they should not be, sidestepping whatever our plans are in order to make deals with the federal government. So this is, as I say, not particularly new, certainly going to be complicated. As you can imagine, there's all sorts of things that fall under municipal and provincial jurisdiction. There's all sorts of potential funding arrangements or deals you can imagine being made. So it'll be, I think, a little bit tricky to write legislation around this and to enforce it and manage it in a way that is still allows for a functioning government. But this is part of the province wanting to make sure that the municipalities are all sort of on the same side of the issues as they are. Also a bit of a jab in the eye at Justin Trudeau. As is off, I bring this up all the time when we talk about Alberta-Ottawa issues. Would this be the sort of thing the government of Alberta would be pursuing if it was a Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre we were talking about, or is this, a little bit of a conservative versus liberal, Alberta versus Ottawa kind of thing going on? So I think there's the on the ground effects of this, but there's also the political dynamic of just not being that happy about, as you say, Ottawa coming in and stepping on a few toes.
Right, and I understand that Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek is not very happy with Premier Smith about this either.
No, she's not, and it's good you brought that up because you can imagine that municipal leaders are like, oh, fabulous, we want money for whatever. Maybe the feds have it, or the feds come knocking and they're thrilled to have the money. And so that's essentially what she's saying. She's saying, well, this creates a whole other layer of bureaucracy. If the federal government needs to go through the province, then the province to us, then us to the province, and the province to the feds, you can imagine that it could potentially slow down the receipt of money. It can slow down deal making, things like that. So she's not wildly happy. And I actually would be skeptical if any municipal politician was wildly enthusiastic about this, because they probably like the independence that they have.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, speaking of municipalities, the Alberta government is also moving ahead with legislation that would allow for municipal political parties. So Tyler, can you explain?
Well, again, we have to look to Quebec a little bit on this, and British Columbia as well. So Vancouver City Council has political parties, and Montreal City Council has political parties. And basically, the United Conservatives argue that to have political party labels on candidates would essentially just be a transparency issue. I mean, you look at any municipal councillor, you more or less know what their political affiliations are, what their political views are. Does it change it that dramatically to say Councillor X, is an NDP member, or maybe some new party in Alberta, Progressive Party member or something like that? So they say this is basically a matter of transparency. People have labels, voters will know who they are. So that's sort of the argument in favor of it. That's sort of the argument the government is making. Critics say, well, look, how well does the partisan political system function in the legislature when everyone spends all day trying to claw each other's eyes out? How well does it work in Ottawa? And why would we bring that, dysfunction to municipal councils? And so that's what Alberta Municipalities, a sort of advocacy group that represents, hundreds, I guess, of towns, villages, and cities around the province are saying. They're saying, well, look, if transparency is the issue, there's maybe other ways to do that. There could be donation limits to municipal councillors. There could be disclosure, financial disclosure rules. There's all these other things, they say, that could be done that wouldn't bring political parties into the system. So, again, old idea, is done elsewhere, is rarely done elsewhere in Canada, only really 2 big cities, and certainly very, very controversial because, again, something the province might like, probably something that municipal folks wouldn't like that much.
How are things in southeastern Alberta these days? Well, our next guest has those answers, and he's coming up right after this break. From the aerospace and defense industry to the United Kingdom military's presence at the Suffield military base, there is quite a bit going on in southeastern Alberta. BCN's Jeanette Rocher sat down with the new MLA for the Medicine Hat-Cypress constituency, which extends all the way down to the U.S. border. Now, while it is confirmed that Highway 3 is going to be twinned over the next few years, she asked MLA Justin Wright if there are plans to widen Highway 41 south.
You know what? I appreciate you asking that question. Minister Dreeshen was just in the riding a few weeks ago and made an announcement that we are in the planning stages, as well as the partway to the engineering planning for a Highway 41 widening in conjunction with the Highway 3 announcement. So what that's going to look like is approximately 52 kilometers from Highway 1. It ends up just going past Elkwater and Cypress Hills Provincial Park, where we are going to be having widening going on down that way, as well as 14 kilometers north of Highway 1 along Highway 41 between the 41 and 41A. That's really going to add to a lot of safety measures and concerns that have been going on down that way. Many of my constituents have had serious near misses on Highway 41, including my family. It's been something that's been very near and dear to me. I'm going to be continuing to focus on this because I think it's just absolutely vitally important for both of our safety of our everyday constituents that are driving that road, going home, going to their ranches, but also for our tourism sector in the southeast corner. Elkwater and Cypress Hills provide a wealth of economic investment when it comes to tourism and people traveling down that road with RVs and boats and jet skis and all those great recreational pieces. If we can't do it in a safe manner, that's going to really impact what we see from a tourism perspective. And for myself, I sit on on a committee called PENWAR. It's the Pacific Northwest Economic Region. I'm one of the delegates. And we talk a lot about corridors, and I view Highway 41 very much as a very important corridor for trade because it has the potential to connect the U.S. with a direct north-south route, potentially all the way up to Fort McMurray, Cold Lake, Bonnyville area, and definitely the Oyen area where we're also seeing a lot of oil and gas development still going on.
Wow, okay, well, that's great news. Safety first, absolutely. Okay, so switching gears here, how is the aerospace and defense industry doing in Medicine Hat?
You know, I don't want to use the word booming because I'm cautiously optimistic that very soon we'll be able to use that wording. But we are seeing such a massive uptick in regards to new starts going on in our region, specifically in aviation, aerospace, and defense. And, you know, I've been kind of floating the idea of trying to get an AAD corridor stretching from Medicine Hat to Edmonton. There's a lot of tech developers working in the aerospace realm in Edmonton, but there's a lot of rocket design, a lot of radar design going on in Medicine Hat, as well as drones. We have a great advantage with our foremost aerial drone range, and that allows for out of sight flying of drones. And we are the only location in Western Canada that has one of those. So it's providing a really key advantage that we can focus on to have this be one of those industries that could potentially backfill the gap that was left from the 2008 recession when we saw the vast majority of oil and gas pull out of the area.
Now, Justin, I believe that you're the provincial liaison with the military. So can you update us on where things are with the Suffield military base just outside of Medicine Hat there?
Yeah, so with that, I've been in fairly regular contact with Lieutenant Colonel Anderchuk. They're continuing to evaluate the situation. You know, the British BATIS folks, there is still some stationed there. They're evaluating what the future looks like for them. But I have also spoken with Brigadier General Graham. He has expressed his commitment that CFB Suffield will be one of the jewels, remain one of the jewels of Canadian 3rd Division. And as we are continuing to keep our ear to the ground, we're very hopeful and optimistic for a very positive turn of events for CFB Suffield, as it's very important to our economic area from a perspective of, you know, new people coming in, you know, constant trade over. I look at a number of years ago when the British soldiers would do training exercises, the economic impact that brought to the community. So we're cautiously optimistic for what the future holds, but also in regards to what the future can bring in regards to a evolution of what goes on there.
Well, it's tax season, and after the break, we have some tips to lower what you owe. It's tax season, and the April 30th deadline to file is starting to loom over us. Last week, we heard from financial expert Kent Prestige, who gave us some advice for the 2024 tax season. We now have part 2 of that interview. He shares with BCN's Jeanette Rocher on write-offs and deductions that will lower what you owe.
Let's talk about charitable tax donations. How beneficial is this? How much would it save on your taxes?
Actually, probably one of the best things that you can do is donate to a charity when it comes to tax treatment. The only thing that's maybe better than that is if you donate to a political party, but the politicians take care of themselves. But for a standard donation to a charitable institution, a church or something like that, the first $200, you're going to get a 15% tax write-off on that. But anything over that, it jumps up exponentially. For example, anything over $200 automatically goes to 39%. And if you get into the really high brackets, you can actually get it goes to 29%. If you get into the higher tax brackets, it could go to 33%. So anything over $200 at the 29% rate, you may not even be paying 29% because you're not in that marginal tax bracket. So there's actually a really good advantage to giving to charity.
Yeah, no kidding. We were talking about write-off expenses before about how. So what about childcare? Can we deduct childcare expenses from our income?
Certainly can. Okay. Yep, and it's a very good write-off. So again, if you're paying a daycare or something like that, make sure you keep your receipts. Make sure you turn them into your accountant so that they can claim it on your tax return as well.
Okay. How about moving expenses?
Moving expenses, yes, with some caveats there. You have to move for business, and pretty well you have to move out of town. You have to move to another town. But if you do move, again, make sure you keep all of your receipts. And not just for the moving company, make sure you keep kilometers for the trip that you did in your own personal car, because you can claim that. If you have to stay in a hotel, make sure you claim the hotel bills. All of those type of expenses can be claimed. And again, that's going to reduce your taxes for that year. But it has to be a move for business.
Right. Oh, great advice there. Okay, so Kent, is it worth keeping medical bills to claim as a deduction?
Well, the deal on medical bills is you can claim anything over 3% of your income. So there's this limit on it. So for example, if you, I'll just calculate, say you made $50,000 times 0.08, you would have to have more than $1,500 worth of um, tax receipts before you can claim anything. So for the average person, $1,500 worth of medical expenses is quite a bit. But again, if you are a senior, then it's well worthwhile, keeping them because your income's lower, eh? So again, it depends on your income. It's 3% of your income, whatever your income is. So you want to make sure that, but keep them. If you buy glasses, a pair of glasses right now could be $800, right?
Exactly.
And you never know what other expenses might come up during the
it could
year.
really add up to that. And I mean, before you know it, there you go. And by the way, Kent, how long should a person maybe hang on to their tax documents for?
Well, legally, you're required to hang on to them for 6 years, but you also need to keep your current years. So it's really 7 years. And then you can throw out anything. But the other thing about taxes is actually your tax returns are statute barred after 3 years, which means Revenue Canada can't open up a tax return that's more than 3 years old unless you ask them to. So if you ask them to open it up, or if they find that you've done something illegal, then they can open up going back further. But really, for the most part, they're not going to go back more than 3 years.
Wow. Lots of advice there, lots of great advice, and lots to think about for sure, especially during this tax season as we're all thinking about getting our taxes filed. Kent, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
After the break, we have some local stories for you, which include a movie that's hitting the screens that you won't want to miss. Plus, Lethbridge Police are holding an info session about intelligence-led policing, and the University of Lethbridge names their Athletes of the Year. You know, the story of a 5-year-old Italian orphan who was nurtured by Canadian soldiers during the Second World War seems like a far-fetched tale, but it really happened. And coming this May, you can see the story behind it all on the silver screen.
Gino was 5 years old. He was a lonely orphan in the midst of a terrible war.
A Canadian-made docudrama based on a true story is set to hit the screens at the Movie Mill this May. Glenn Miller, president of the Lethbridge United Services Institute, shares what the flick is all about.
The docudrama is called Gino, A Child of War, and it's a story of how some Canadian soldiers in Italy found a 5-year-old orphan, and they were able to adopt him into their camp lifestyle, had a little uniform for him, and were able to actually care as soldiers of someone young. And the person went on to live through the war and become a successful engineer in Italy, and will be actually coming back to Canada next year to lay a wreath at the graves of one of his soldiers that found him.
Miller adds that those who see the movie are allowed a unique user experience by having a rare question and answer session after the film with those who brought the production to life. He also says the movie is important for people of all ages and generations to watch, as it adds a human element to what a soldier really is.
As we go through the battlefields of Europe, this puts on a human dimension of what a soldier is. It's not just the battle. They have family members at home. They have children. When I went to Bosnia, I had a young girl, so I could relate as a father looking at young kids in a different country. And so this is a very important story for the Italian community here in Lethbridge and for everyone else in southern Alberta.
Gino, A Child of War premieres on Sunday, May 5th at 2 p.m. at the Movie Mill. Tickets are $10, available from the bar at the Lethbridge Legion. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day. A special public information session about intelligence-led policing is coming up on April 22nd from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. at the Lethbridge Public Library. The focus will be on the use of analytics and intelligence to reduce crime. Presenters include Lethbridge Police Chief Shaheen Medizadeh and Stefan Contra, an expert in analytics management at Lethbridge Police Service. The fee is $20. You can register for it through the Lethbridge Chamber of Commerce or the Lethbridge Public Library. Pronghorn Athletics hosted their 57th Blue and Gold Awards ceremony earlier this week, celebrating the remarkable achievements of student athletes during the 2023-24 season. In this next report, we hear from some of this year's winners. Students and staff at the University of Lethbridge's Pronghorn Athletics Department took home some extra hardware this week at the 57th Annual Blue and Gold Awards ceremony. Among them are Chris Alexander in men's swimming. He won Male Athlete of the Year for his exceptional performances in the pool, which include winning gold in the 50-meter backstroke for the second consecutive year at U Sports. Also in swimming is Female Athlete of the Year, Delaney Lehman. She showcased her talent and tenacity at the Canada West Championships, securing a silver medal in the 50-meter breaststroke and a bronze in the 400-meter freestyle relay, all while emerging as the highest point scorer for her team. She says despite the team having a great year, she hopes they come back next year even stronger.
I think we can always do better. I think we stayed nice and high up in the rankings all year. We were top 10 all year. I think we could just keep going forward. Like, everybody just gets stronger and stronger as we go.
And a first for this year was Coach of the Year. The inaugural award was given to women's basketball head coach Dave Wachnuck.
This is up here. I mean, anytime you get stuff from your peers and people you respect and people that you work with, I mean, it means a ton. So, but I'm really humble with it. I mean, you don't get these things without great support.
At a media event held Thursday morning, Pronghorn Athletics also announced a fundraising event called the Pronghorn Gala and Cabaret. Events coordinator Taylor Penny says, after the formal part of the evening, the entertainment that follows is sure to be a hit.
At 8 p.m., we are lucky to have Pronghorn community members Cal Toth and Anna McBrien engage us in a captivating dueling pianos performance. Cal and Anna are known in the community to provide a fun and engaging performance, and we're excited to have them be part of our event. The set list for the evening is by request, and the performers can be persuaded to play your request by including a donation. The Pronghorn Gala and Cabaret is taking place on April 18th in the Science Commons atrium on campus. Tickets are available at gohorns.ca/gala. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day. Now, we know we're supposed to take supplements to boost our immunity, but what kinds of vitamins are best? Up next, we hear from naturopathic Dr. Clayton Cogano on how to keep the flu and cold germs away.